Here are the simple steps to reconciling in Fishbowl Inventory. This is entering the vendor's invoice. The bookkeeper will actually log into Fishbowl, go to the receiving screen, and enter the vendor invoice in Fishbowl. So if you're the bookkeeper, you'll log into Fishbowl. You've got the vendor invoice in your hand here, and you'll go to Purchasing, Receiving. There is not a special bill screen in Fishbowl, it's the receiving screen. And so user rights should be set up so the accountant has rights to the receiving screen and has rights to reconcile. Find the purchase order that the invoice identifies. You can search by entering the PO number here or entering the vendor here. And hopefully it's something that has been received already. Okay, so we'll select one of these that have been received. So now we've selected a purchase order on the receiving screen that's been received. We see red trucks all the way down. That's good. That's what you want to see are red trucks. That means they've been received. If they haven't been received, they'll look like this, green triangles. And that means you'll probably want to set the invoice aside and not reconcile this bill, because we don't really want to recognize AP in QuickBooks unless we've received it usually, right? So let me go back to this one here. You'll see there's a reconcile button on the right hand side, and there's a reconcile button on the top left hand corner here. It's best to set up user rights to keep yourself from making a mistake and clicking the reconcile button on the right. This one skips a bunch of steps. Sure, you can put in your reference number and your bill date down here, but it doesn't allow you to enter shipping charges and landed cost and change costs and whatnot. The place you want to be is up here on the left hand side, this reconcile button right here. Click that reconcile button, you get this nice wizard that lets you walk through all the reconciliation steps, which gave this step its name, reconcile. Because that's what you're doing, you're reconciling what was received with the invoice the vendor gives you. So put in the invoice number right here, enter the bill date from the invoice number that you received, and if there's any discrepancies, like if this is a green triangle, uncheck the box. If there's a different cost than what was on the PO, enter in the cost. So it looks like we actually have costs missing completely. So it's good to put in the costs here, especially if they're missing. Checks and balances, right? You've got the person that enters in the purchase order. They should be looking at the costs at that point. But if they don't, then all right, you swoop in to save the day and get the costs right. There we go. We've got all the costs in there, and we look at the bill total. If this bill total matches what's on the invoice, then we're ready to proceed to the next screen. Click Next. Now this screen often confuses people. What it's talking about here when it says Add Items is usually shipping related charges is what it's talking about. So we click the little green plus sign right here, this little green plus sign, and then type in shipping and add shipping, and add the shipping charges that they charged us for shipping. We'll put that in there. Most of the time, shipping is part of the vendor's bill, so that box is checked. In rare circumstances that you'll want to carefully collect the shipping invoice one day and collect the vendor invoice another day, get your timing just right, and enter the vendor invoice and the carrier invoice both at the same time, takes a little bit of planning and organization, then you would uncheck this box. That would mean that the add item to vendor bill, this is a separate thing. The carrier invoice is separate, and we'll create shipping accrual in QuickBooks instead of just be lumped together with the payable on the vendor invoice. So this affects accounting too. play with that, get familiar with that before you go live. Hopefully you have the luxury of doing that. But we'll go ahead and add shipping. Click next. And now this screen, let me move this over so you can see this. We've got a landed cost step. So it wants to calculate the landed cost. And it's going to take that $25.60, which probably isn't that realistic for what they ship to us here. Let me go back and make that a little more realistic. I'm going to go back, change this shipping charge, click edit, and let's move that. That's a little more of a realistic shipping charge. There we go. So we're going to land the $250 cost across all of these parts, and there's a lot of different ways to do it: manually, quantity, size, weight. The default is cost, as you can see. If you want weight or size to work, then you have to carefully set this up beforehand and make sure all the parts have weight on the part module or on the part screen. This works pretty good for most occasions. And click next. So now we'll see the final reconciliation page. We've got the shipping charges. The unit cost right here, that's what was on the purchase order. The person filling out the purchase order did a pretty bad job and missed a lot of prices, but we swooped in and saved the day and got all the prices in there. And then we landed the cost, and notice 50 cents turned into 52 cents. Now what's going to happen when we click finish is Fishbowl is going to create a costing layer for each one of those items, and the costing layer is going to be the landed cost. So that doesn't change the purchase cost, and that doesn't change what the program is going to recommend to you next time you create a purchase order. The landed cost is going to become the costing layer and the value of the inventory. And when we click finish here, several journal entries are going to happen. Okay, it's going to debit inventory and credit payables for the cost of these items. And then with shipping, it's going to debit shipping expense and credit payables. All right, but then there's one more. It'll credit shipping expense and debit inventory. So kind of in and out of shipping expense right there. We click finish, and those are the simple steps of reconciling a vendor invoice. I'm Lance, inventory software expert since 2006 and Fishbowl expert since 2006. Be sure to subscribe to this channel to see more useful videos like this, and comment below if you have any questions, and click that like button.